The Appalachian Mountains are not merely a geographical feature on the map of the United States. They are an entity. Geologists will tell you that these ridges are older than the Atlantic Ocean, older than the rings of Saturn, and significantly older than the first bones that ever formed inside a living creature. When you walk into the deep timber of West Virginia, Kentucky, or North Carolina, you are stepping into a biological time capsule that has been watching the world turn for 480 million years. In a place this ancient time does not move in a straight line. It pools in the valleys. It hides in the limestone caverns, and it keeps secrets that modern science still struggles to explain. We are going to descend into the 10 most unsettling, unexplained mysteries that have clawed their way out of these hills. These are not campfire stories invented to scare children. These are events documented by police reports, federal investigations, and the oral histories of the people who have lived here since long before the first maps were drawn. The first mystery challenges our understanding of physics and geology. It is located in the Pisgah National Forest of North Carolina, overlooking the Linville Gorge. For over a century, people have reported seeing erratic, multicolored illuminations rising from the ridge. They are known as the Brown Mountain Lights. While ghost lights are a common trope in folklore, the Brown Mountain Lights are different because they have been subjected to rigorous government study. The first written account appeared in the Charlotte Daily Observer in 1913, reporting mysterious red and white orbs dancing above the horizon. The United States Geological Survey sent researchers to investigate. Their initial conclusion was mundane. They claimed the lights were merely the reflection of locomotive headlights from a distant train track. This theory satisfied the skeptics until 1916. In 1916, a massive flood devastated the region. It washed away the train bridges and halted all rail traffic for weeks. The roads were impassable. The power was out. The mountains were plunged into total pre-industrial darkness, and yet the lights returned. They rose from the gorge, silent and pulsing, proving that they were not man-made. To this day, there is no proven explanation. Some scientists argue for piezoelectricity, the idea that the massive deposits of quartz in the mountain are under such extreme tectonic pressure that they discharge electricity directly into the air. But locals have a different explanation. They point to the Cherokee legend of a great battle fought in the valley centuries ago. They say the lights are the spirits of Cherokee women searching the dark woods with torches, looking for the bodies of their husbands and sons. Whether it is geology or ghosts, the lights remain. They appear without warning. They move with intelligent patterns, and they vanish before they can be captured. Moving from the unexplained lights in the sky to the terror on the ground, we encounter a phenomenon that has baffled the FBI and the National Park Service. It is the specific, clustered nature of disappearances in the Great Smoky Mountains. While people go missing in national parks frequently, the Appalachians have a distinct profile for these cases. Experienced outdoorsmen, people who know the land, vanish instantly. But the most disturbing case, number 2 on our list, is the disappearance of Dennis Martin. On June 14, 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Martin was camping with his family at Spencefield, a grassy clearing near the Appalachian Trail. It was Father's Day weekend. The park was busy. Dennis was playing hide-and-seek with his brother and cousins. The adults were sitting only a few yards away. The children planned a prank to jump out from behind the bushes to scare their parents. 3 boys jumped out. Dennis did not. His father waited less than 5 minutes before walking over to the bush where Dennis was last seen. He was gone. There was no sound of a struggle. No cry for help, just silence. What followed was the largest search and rescue operation in the history of the National Park Service. 1,400 people, including the Green Berets and the National Guard, combed the mountains grid by grid. Heavy rain turned the roads to mud, complicating the search, but they found nothing. No shoes, no clothes, no body. However, there was a lead that was buried in the files for years. A few miles away, a family named the Keys was hiking near the extraction point. They reported hearing an enormous, sickening scream that did not sound like an animal. Moments later, they saw a figure moving stealthily through the trees. They described it not as a bear, but as a wild man, hairy, disheveled, and walking on 2 legs. The figure appeared to be carrying something over its shoulder. The FBI investigated the Key family's sighting, but ultimately dismissed it, concluding there was not enough evidence to link it to the boy. But the question remains: what happened in those 5 minutes? How does a child vanish from the face of the earth, surrounded by family? The Dennis Martin case opened the door to the terrifying possibility that something lives in these mountains, something that knows how to navigate the sound shadows of the terrain, taking victims without making a sound. This leads us directly into our third mystery, which provides a potential historical context for such entities. It is the legend of the Moon-Eyed People. Long before the Cherokee Nation claimed these lands, they spoke of a race of distinct humanoid beings that already inhabited the caves and deep hollers. The Cherokee called them the Moon-Eyed People because they were nocturnal. They had pale white skin, bearded faces, and large blue eyes that were so sensitive to the sun that they could only emerge at night. According to oral tradition, a war was fought between the Cherokee and this pale race. The Moon-Eyed People were driven out, not away from the mountains, but into them. They retreated into the vast, unexplored cave systems that honeycombed the Appalachians. For decades, archaeologists treated this as pure myth. But then, strange structures began to be catalogued. On Fort Mountain in Georgia, there is an ancient stone wall that stretches for nearly 900 feet. It serves no apparent military purpose. Its height varies, and it snakes through the terrain in a way that suggests ceremonial use rather than defense. Cherokee elders have always maintained that they did not build this wall. They say it was built by the Moon-Eyed People. If we look at this through a cryptozoological lens, we have to ask, if a group of humans or near-humans was forced to live underground for thousands of years, how would they evolve? They would lose their pigment. They would develop night vision. They would become masters of stealth and silence. When hikers today report seeing pale, crawling figures near the entrances of mines and caves in Kentucky and West Virginia, are they seeing ghosts? Or are they seeing the descendants of a civilization that went underground and never came back out? The fourth mystery takes us to the dark history of the mining industry and the things they woke up. We traveled to the town of Monongah, West Virginia. The Appalachians are rich in coal, and for centuries men have dug deep into the earth to extract it. But miners are a superstitious lot, and for good reason. Every deep miner has a story about the knockers. The Tommyknockers, or simply knockers, are said to be small, imp-like entities that live inside the coal seams. The legend traveled over with the Welsh and Cornish miners, but it mutated in the Appalachians. Here, the knockers are not just mischievous, they are omens. Miners report hearing a rhythmic tap-tap on the wooden support beams, deep in the shafts. Skeptics say this is just the sound of the earth settling, the rocks groaning under the weight of the mountain. But the old-timers know better. They say the knocking is a warning. If you hear the 3 knocks, you have minutes to get out before a collapse. In the Monongah mining disaster of 1907, the worst in American history, survivors spoke of hearing strange sounds in the days leading up to the explosion. But there is a darker side to the knockers. Some claim they are not warning the miners, but trapping them. There are reports of miners following the sound of tapping, thinking it is a trapped colleague, only to be led into an unstable section of the mine that collapses on top of them. It suggests that the mountain itself has an immune system, and it uses these entities to clear out the infection that is humanity. Number 5 brings us to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and the year that the sky turned against the people. While many have heard of the Mothman, few understand the true depth of the high strangeness that gripped this small town in 1966 and 67. This was not just a monster sighting. It was a contagion of paranoia. It began in November of 1966, when 2 young couples, driving near the abandoned TNT area World War II explosives manufacturing site, hidden in the dense forest, saw something that defied biological classification. They described a man-sized figure, standing nearly 7 feet tall, with massive wings folded against its back, and glowing red eyes set into its chest. It chased their car at speeds of over 100 miles per hour, effortlessly keeping pace without flapping its wings. Over the next 13 months, over 100 respectable citizens, including volunteer firemen and police officers, reported seeing the creature. But the horror of Point Pleasant wasn't just the beast. It was the accompanying phenomena. People reported their phones ringing with strange metallic shrieks. Strange men in black suits visited witnesses, threatening them into silence. The town was experiencing a collective psychological siege. It all culminated on December 15, 1967. The Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant to Ohio over the freezing Ohio River, collapsed during rush hour. 46 people died. After the tragedy, the sightings stopped instantly. The Mothman was never seen again. This has led to the chilling theory that the creature was not a predator, but a warning, a harbinger of doom that we were too frightened to understand. From warnings of the future, we move to number 6, a malice from the past. We travel to Adams, Tennessee, to discuss the most documented haunting in American history. The Bell Witch. This is not a vague ghost story. This is a case where an entity physically assaulted a family for years, witnessed by hundreds of people, including future President of the United States, Andrew Jackson. In the early 19th century, John Bell and his family began experiencing poltergeist activity that rapidly escalated into violence. It started with scratching on the walls and the sounds of chains being dragged across the floor. Then, the entity began to speak. It identified itself as Kate and claimed it would not stop until John Bell was dead. The spirit would physically slap the children, pull their hair, and scream distinct, intelligent insults at the family guests. General Andrew Jackson, intrigued by the reports, traveled to the Bell farm with a wagon train. As they approached the property, their wagon wheels suddenly locked. The horses pulled, but the wagon wouldn't move, as if welded to the earth. A disembodied female voice cackled from the bushes, telling them they could proceed. Jackson is famously quoted as saying, "I would rather fight the entire British Army than face the Bell Witch." The haunting ended in murder. John Bell was found comatose in 1820, with a strange vial of black liquid nearby. The entity's voice was heard claiming responsibility, saying she had fed him the poison. To this day, the Bell Witch Cave remains a place where visitors report being scratched, pushed, and overcome with sudden nausea. Number 7 takes us away from entities and into the geography itself. There is a patch of land in Chatham County, North Carolina, where nature refuses to exist. It is called the Devil's Tramping Ground. Located deep in the woods, it is a perfect circle, 40 feet in diameter. For over 100 years, nothing has grown within this circle. Not a tree, not a flower, not a weed. The forest creates a dense canopy right up to the edge of the circle, and then stops abruptly. Scientists have analyzed the soil and found it to be sterile, but they cannot explain why. It is chemically similar to the soil just outside the ring, yet it is dead. Local legend says that the devil himself rises from hell at night and paces in this circle, plotting against humanity, and his scorching heat kills the vegetation. But the true mystery lies in the experiments people have conducted. If you leave an object inside the circle, at dusk a heavy stone, a tent, a camarit will not be there in the morning. It will be found thrown violently into the tree line, yards away. People who have attempted to spend the night in the circle report hearing heavy footsteps pacing around their tents until their courage breaks and they flee. Number 8 is the Flatwoods Monster, a case that suggests the Appalachians might be a beacon for things not of this world. On September 12, 1952, in Braxton County, West Virginia, a group of boys saw a bright, pulsing object streak across the sky and crash into a hillside farm. Gathering a National Guardsman and a few adults, they climbed the hill to investigate. The air was thick with a pungent metallic mist that made their eyes water and their throats burn. At the top of the hill, they saw a pulsating red ball of light. Standing next to it was a figure that has become the stuff of nightmares. It was described as being 10 feet tall, with a spade-shaped head and a dark armored body that seemed to glide above the ground rather than walk. It had no visible arms, only claw-like appendages. When the guardsman shined a flashlight on it, the creature hissed and emitted a beam of light, sending the group running in terror. Unlike many UFO sightings, this event left physical evidence. The witnesses suffered from similar symptoms for weeks afterward: vomiting, convulsions, and throat swelling consistent with exposure to a chemical agent like mustard gas. The Braxton County monster suggests that whatever hides in these hills is not always flesh and blood, and it is certainly not friendly. Number 9 brings us to a phenomenon that is becoming increasingly common in the modern folklore of the Appalachians. It is a biological horror that challenges the definition of what an animal is. For generations, hunters in Virginia, Tennessee, and North Carolina have told stories about deer that do not behave like deer. They call them the not deer. At a glance, these creatures look like ordinary whitetails. But upon closer inspection, the anatomy is wrong. Witnesses describe them as having joints that bend backward, eyes that are forward-facing like a predator's rather than on the side of the head like prey, and a neck structure that is too thick, too muscular. But the most terrifying aspect is not how they look. It is how they act. Prey animals have a distinct flight response. When spooked, they run. These things do not run. They stand their ground. They stare. Hunters have reported shooting these creatures at point-blank range, only to watch them trot away with mechanical, jerky movements, unbothered by the impact. This ties into a broader, darker aspect of Appalachian high strangeness, mimicry. There are countless reports from hikers who hear their own names being called from the deep woods, not in a generic voice, but in the specific voice of a loved one, a spouse, a child. The cadence is perfect, but the tone is flat, like a recording being played back. In the lore of the deep hollers, you never answer these calls. The belief is that there are predators in these mountains that have evolved not to hunt with claws, but with sound. They learn to mimic human distress, to lure helpful Samaritans off the trail and into the kill zone. If you hear a baby crying in a remote gorge, miles from the nearest road, or if you hear your hiking partner calling for help when you know they are standing right next to you, you do not investigate. You turn around and you leave. And finally, we arrive at number 10, the ultimate mystery. The question that hangs over every missing poster stapled to a telephone pole in a West Virginia mining town. It is the mystery of the vanishing. We are not talking about getting lost. People get lost everywhere. We are talking about the physics of disappearance. There are cases in the Great Smoky Mountains where tracking dogs, bloodhounds bred to follow a scent across concrete and water will reach a specific spot in the woods and simply lie down. They do not lose the scent, they act terrified. They whimper, they tuck their tails, and they refuse to move forward. Search and rescue teams often describe finding a missing person's belongings stacked neatly in a pile. Clothes folded, shoes placed side by side. Why would a person suffering from hypothermia or panic take the time to organize their clothes before vanishing? It suggests a psychological break, or perhaps a submission to something else. There is a theory known as the call of the void. It is the unexplained urge to jump from a high place or to drive into oncoming traffic. In the Appalachians, this call pulls you deeper into the woods. It is a trance state. Survivors who have been found days later often have no memory of the time that passed. They describe a fog, a feeling of being led, or a sensation that the woods themselves shifted around them to block the path home. The Appalachians are the oldest mountains on Earth. They have worn down from jagged peaks to rolling hills over hundreds of millions of years. They have seen the rise and fall of dinosaurs, the ice ages, and the spread of humanity. They are patient, and they are hungry. When you look at the map of these mountains, you are looking at a graveyard of the unrecovered. For every Dennis Martin, for every strange light on Brown Mountain, for every mimic calling from the brush, there are a dozen stories that go untold because there is no one left to tell them. The final advice from the locals is always the same. Respect the land. Stay on the trail. And if you feel like you are being watched from the tree line, do not look back. Because in the Appalachians, if you acknowledge the darkness, it acknowledges you.